First of all, thank you very much for welcoming us. You're going to hear a different angle, but it's all connected. Last week we were in Berlin. We had 2,500 investors. We spent, infrastructure, energy infrastructure, funds, LPs, insurance companies. We spent one day talking about batteries. 2 years ago, nothing. We were last month at the Energy Storage Conference. We had 1,000 delegates. People were elbowing themselves. Right now, there is Giga EU in Budapest, where all the automotive industry is gathering to see how much battery they're going to buy and how they organize their gigafactories. 2 years ago, that conference did not exist, which means we are literally in the midst of an extraordinary, but I'm saying not like arithmetic, we really like the J curve of the whole battery system. And so if you invest in all those raw materials, you really are at the right place.
I'd maybe add to that I actually, maybe I just give you a little bit of background here, understand who I am and also who Laurent is. I've spent the last 20 years really financing technology companies. I was originally a technology analyst, and then somebody asked me to look at a solar company about 20 years ago. And I went and had a look at it, and I thought, I visited the production plant, and I thought, what a joke. And I said, I went back to my client, and I said, don't put money in that. I said, this will never make money. And he said, no, I want you to go and meet the entrepreneur behind it. And I did. And the entrepreneur turned to me and he said to me, Gerard, he said, you don't understand what's going on here. He said, this is not, a nuclear power plant or a coal plant or whatever. This is a piece of technology like that mobile phone you have in your pocket. And he says the costs are just going to go down and down from year to year. And I just give you an idea, at that time, and that's 20 years ago, the cost of installing a megawatt of solar was 6 million euros, right? So that meant if you were generating electricity with it, you were probably a cost of about 150 euros a megawatt hour. That's what you were coming out with. Well, today, you're doing this for 500,000, okay? So it's, you've had a 90% reduction in cost. And what's really interesting about solar is today is that we still don't understand the extent to which this technology is coming onto the market. And Shell the other day put out a report on their future energy scenario. And in their so-called Sky scenario, which is where we get to net zero by 2050, they made an assumption that, and this was for this year, that the solar capacities worldwide, in other words, production capacities, would be between 200 and 250 gigawatts. And I thought, okay, that's very interesting. Obviously, these guys haven't done their homework because the market for solar last year was 270 gigawatts, right? So just realize they just put the report out. And what's also very interesting about it was that they made an assumption, which was by 2040, there would be a terawatt of capacity for solar production worldwide. Now, what's really interesting is I'm very close to a lot of the Chinese solar companies. We'll have that by 2028, okay? Now, why do I say it? It's technology, guys. It's technology. It's that device there is a semiconductor, right? And by the way, Laurent started with batteries. It's the exact same thing, right? If you go back to batteries, remember, I think all of us know the first mobile phone, right? It had a life of 1 hour and, it was chunky and heavy. And now I've got a supercomputer in my pocket. And why do I say that? It's a technology. We've moved from nickel cadmium batteries to lithium ion. The lithium ion getting better and better. What's more interesting is, and I think you probably realize this, there's a battery management system in there that actually, when I put that down, what happens? The light goes out. Okay, I'm not doing that. Now, by the way, you might look and go, well, why is that important? It's gone out, right? Why? The exact same thing happens in an electric car today. Okay, I had an electric car, BMW i3, which I had about 5 years ago, and it told me it had a range of 170 kilometers. It never did. On a cold day, I was getting 100 kilometers, right? I now have the new BMW, and it's got a heat pump in it, and it's got a really good energy management system in it. So when it says it's got a 380 kilometer range, in a cold day, it's 350. right? That's technology progress. So I come from, we're in a technology revolution. And the technology revolution is you're going to electrify our world. And the reason you're going to electrify it is because it's the most controllable energy source that we have there. All right. I can't really control diesel or gasoline. Just think of it. Well, the only thing you can do with it is burn it. But you can't improve the efficiency of that burning process. We've been trying for 100 years. We still lose 70% of the energy goes into that car through exhaust fuels. I don't have that with electricity. And that's why this is very, very important, because electricity will automatically, at some point, be cheaper because of the fact that you don't have all these crazy heat losses, et cetera, et cetera. And I go back to, it's the semiconductors that allow this to happen, right? That's what it is. It's software and semiconductors that are allowing it. And so I look in the future, that's the way our energy system will be run. It will be run by artificial intelligence, right? It'll be run by software and hardware. We were at this conference the other day, and there was somebody sitting on a panel, and he made a very interesting comment about National Grid. That's the grid operator here in the UK. He said that if you went back 10 years ago, National Grid would be able to predict how much power generation was on its system 6 days in advance, right? Fully accurate, 99% accuracy. He says they can't do this 6 minutes in advance today. They can't, okay? So guess what? Am I really going to rely on that man who's sitting in the control room with his lever doing this, that, and the other? No, I'm not. You have to digitalize it, right? And that's where we're going with all of this. And the UK is actually at the forefront of digitalizing this energy system, because we can't rely on that human being to make the right decision. Again, think of this, right? If we all had to wait for me to go and switch that light, the battery would be dead in an hour, right? So anyway, that's, I would start with that and say we're in a revolution.
Yeah, we are. So to give you a bit of a big numbers, the world production, well, additional production of electricity every year is about the size of Brazil. We add a grid of Brazil every year worldwide. And this year, for the first time, 100% of the additional capacity is going to be brought by renewables, just wind and solar. So we had 10 years ago, wind and solar would do 10% of the increase of power, went to 50, 70, 80. So now we're going to a place where as solar grows, they're going to start eating into the existing grid and the market share, whether it's of coal or hydro or gas or nuclear, depends really where. So we see electrification just continue to grow up, and we see it done the additional mostly with renewables, which means that the grids, as Gerard said, are becoming more fragile. We need, in fact, in order to deliver electrons everywhere, anywhere at the same second, there are two elements which are critical. I call them space and time. Space is you need to have all your grids interconnected with one another. So that's a lot of copper, of course, all the transmission, and there are gigantic plans to develop more and more transmissions because that's the normal optimization. And of course, the second one is time, because we hear all the time, oh, what happens when the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow? To which I reply, yeah, what happens when it doesn't rain and, you open your tap and there's still water? Why? Because there's a big storage. So storage is going to be everywhere. It's going to be totally ubiquitous. It's going to be gigantic. The batteries of, the size of half a nuclear plant down to the one in your garage with literally every step at the district, all digital. And of course, the big question everybody asks, and Gerard and I, of course, we disagree, is how much can you be able to use your car batteries, which are 90% of the batteries. The rest is what we call stationary storage. So how much of those batteries will be used to support the grid? There are a lot of theories around it. I think it's not going to be that much, just because the people who give the guarantee on those batteries don't want a third party to start juicing, and so there will be a lot of limitation. Now, they might use those batteries in Texas or Australia to have a backup when they have a blackout, and that's fine. So maybe 3 days a year, but I don't see a daily interaction between the cars. So we'll have a lot of batteries, and all those batteries, as far as your I mean, we're talking about 20 times more batteries than what we have now, and we already did what time 5 the past 6 or 7 years. So the growth is absolutely but we're just at the cusp. It's going to be for cars because we're going to electrify the transportation sector as much as we decarbonize the power sector. You'll have batteries everywhere. Everywhere. So your question you're asking yourself is, oh, great, I'm just going to take a Bloomberg volume and they say time 30, hence I need time 30 more material. At the same time, the work on efficiency is absolutely phenomenal. The work on, new type of cathodes, new type of anodes, new type of coating, which means there is also a race to the technological efficiency in batteries, and also looking every time at new material. When you had all those those ESG story about nickel and Indonesia or cobalt and Congo, that we're like, we know, well, as miners, that this is just 1% of the market. But guess what? The images it project. I go to an insurer. I say, can you insure the batteries? I'm investing in batteries right now. Can you insure those batteries? The first thing they say, no cobalt. The image which is given by those exceptions just makes it toxic as an investor in stationary storage to put any cobalt. Now, the good thing is it's more expensive. I don't need to, the fact that I don't put nickel in my batteries means I don't need to put the fire. The fire system is much lighter. I can do air cooling versus liquid cooling. So they end up being much cheaper. So the ESG choice in that case is very easy. But then there are other cases where you really will have a strong debate between the technical performance and the ESG aspect. And I know the European, and whether it's the IRA in America or the European, they try to have the passport for the batteries. And so you're going to track the material and how much is recycled and so on. Right now, it's a bit fuzzy, but it's going to come. You will have several tracks of value chain, of logistical chain, where in China, they're going to use illegal lepidolite, and they're going to put illegal cobalt, and they're going to put, Indonesian nickel, and they're going to make batteries, and that's going to be for the Chinese market. And you will have like premium ESG clean and so on going in, passport QR code on every ingots, and that's going to end up in the Porsche or the Ferrari. Or
You're right. You're right.
Am I right?
You're right. I think one thing I will say, and just to add to it, is China, right? People, it's very, in the West here, we criticize China a lot and they say, oh man, they keep building coal plants and this, that, and the other thing. I'm sorry, they're leading not just the production of all of these technology, but the implementation, right? So I give you an idea, we're in March of this year, Chinese solar installations are twice what they were last year, right? Just in the first 3 months. So they've done 10 gigawatts a month so far, right? Now, why is this interesting? What it normally is, you don't put install solar in January, February. Why? Because the ground's frozen, okay? And they're doing it. Now, what this means is, not only are they doing that, though, I go to electric vehicles. I drive a BMW. It's made in China. It's not made in Germany. It's made in China. It's made in a Shanghai factory. Okay, the Chinese lead the whole value chain of electrification. 20% of new cars in China are electric. They don't go and drive internal combustion engine motorbikes like we do. They're all electric, right? If you look in the scooter market, two-wheel market across the world, give you an idea, 40% of all scooters sold today globally are electric, right?
The buses.
And the buses, the exact same thing. China leads all of this, right? Why? One, because they realize they've got a problem with their environment themselves. Anyone who's been to China, you will see the smog problems that they have, right? But there's a second thing. It's called energy security. They look and they see the US Fifth Fleet off their coast and it scares the living daylights out of them because they're the biggest importer of oil in the world. And they know and they realize, how do we become energy independent? Well, we do this by doing as much renewables, nuclear, etc., as we can, and we electrify. And if we do that, we also are able to build up, a next generation technology. That's what the Chinese do. And by the way, we did this at the beginning of the 20th century, right? If you look, who dominates the electrification of our world today? Who dominates the internal combustion engine? It's the same businesses, ABB, Ford, Siemens. They all came about at the beginning of the 20th century. And Western companies still dominate these industries. We will not dominate these new technologies going forward because the Chinese understood what we did 100 years ago, and we're too slow to change to catch up with them, right? I mean, that's the reality, which is why my China BMW is Chinese, not German, okay? So that's really the reality we're in. And I think China will continue pushing this going forward. People often ask me about Japan. My God, the Japanese car industry is dead, right? They're
Yeah,
completely dead. They will not be around in 20 years' time, right? Because they have not changed at all. At least the Europeans and the Americans, they realize, oh shit, there's a technology change here. We're going from the horse and cart to the internal combustion engine. We better change. The Japanese are going, oh, the future is fuel cells and hydrogen. Has anyone ever driven a fuel cell car? They're awful. They're absolutely awful. And by the way, they have a battery in it. So, you've got a battery and a fuel cell in them. You think, is that really going to beat your battery going forward? No, it's not. That's like having two batteries in your mobile phone. Doesn't work, right? It's stupid. And it's like buying a 1980s Prius, except it costs the price of a Tesla. So you're going to go, really?
and you can't refuel it.
And you can't refuel it. You really going to buy that? No, you're not, right?
No, but I would say the interesting thing is that the OECD has this tendency to put patents on everything and very strong on intellectual property, where the Chinese, they don't care. In fact, they don't care if it's yours, they don't care if it's them, they just help themselves. Never forget, Mao Zedong was a teacher, and one of the premise of Chinese culture is education should be for free, aka knowledge should be for free. I don't want to pay your IP, I'm just gonna steal it, and they think it's legitimate, which means also there's a lot of non-patented innovation that they are doing, and which is circulating very fast in our business. And when I go into some batteries forum, some webinar, we've got 300 guys and a bit of girls, age 25, 28, 30. They are from all over the place. You've got guys from Chile, you've got guys from Germany, Romania, Australia, India. Everybody's talking together, very excited. The amount of innovation which is going on in the battery sector is even beyond my understanding. There's a new tech every 6 months, improvement. You think you reach, all those like us say, look, I'm an academic. This is the physical level. You can't go above, otherwise you're defying the laws of Einstein. And poof, 3 months later, everybody's against. It's like twice above. So we will need a lot of the material you are producing. How much, I don't know, and nobody knows. Is it going to be times 5? Is it going to be times 10? But it's going to be times a lot. There will be also a lot of recycling, a lot. Because if you go and you mine in, copper mine, and you have like 2% of copper, guess what? If you find some e-waste, you will have 2% of copper. So I see a huge development of the circular economy. This is absolutely massive, and the question is how you virgin miners will be able to work with the secondhand, because they call themselves miners as well, which is interesting. And any other trends you see?
I think the one thing that I'd like to add to you guys is I would just say the Ukrainian situation is a game changer. Okay, and I think this is very important to understand why. Is that if you were an industrial commercial customer across anywhere in the Western world, you've had declining energy prices since 2008. Now, what does that mean? If you're BSF, biggest energy user in Europe, you've loved this. You go, this is great. My margin just goes up every year. Well, guess what? It cost them 3 billion euros last year, 3 billion extra euros, and they cut gas demand by 25%, and it still cost them 3 billion euros. Now they're scared shitless because they're going, oh my God, I have to change. Well, how do you change? Well, you change by looking at energy efficiency and you look at other technologies, and worst case, you say, I'm going to move out. Now, why is that very important? Because that changes the whole energy landscape, particularly in Europe. But by the way, that also had an impact on everyone else, because guess what? We have to buy the LNG from the US, pushes the price up for everybody else. The coal price goes up to all-time highs. That was the environment that we were in last year. So for us, we would say we've entered the era of volatility, right? And it's not just in the energy space. Let's look at the lithium price, right? Let's look at the copper price. That's the world that we're in right now, and that is not going to change going forward. That's what I would just say to you. I do agree with Laurent, though, from a mining perspective. My God, what an opportunity you guys have, right? But if I'd say one thing as a former sell-side analyst, your communication is awful as an industry. Absolutely awful. The only people you communicate to are old people. There's not one young person that gets excited about how many ounces of gold you're taking from the ground and what your seismic test told them, etc., etc. There's nothing in that. Why do they go and buy shares in Facebook? Because it's exciting, right? It's a great story. And by the way, you have a story, guys, because we cannot decarbonize our world without the help of all of you in the room and your whole industry. We cannot do it. But God almighty, you have to change the way you communicate, because, even the generalists, the big generalist investors, they look at you guys and they go, mining companies, oh my God, I'm staying away from them. I'm not going near them. Even though you're critical. And all the sustainability funds, the same thing. Is any of them really put money into your mining exploration, which is critical to all of this? No, they're not. So that's my sort of challenge to you, is that, really come out with and change the way you communicate, and make sure if you can communicate with your children about what you're doing on a daily basis, then you're winning. That's my view.
Yeah.
Am I being too hard?
No, you're being too nice.
Oh.
They asked me to be polite. Yeah, it's why is there 100% here and 2,000 last week? You're not doomed to be a niche. You you see yourself like there is an inverted pyramid, and of course you are at the bottom of it, but you should be the foundation of the pyramid. And it's but the radical thinking is discover your new clients. It's not like, okay, oh, it's a coal plant, or a steel mill, so I just put train of it, and it's a logistical problem. Your clients are, if you look at the lithium, the amount of specialty chemical transformation, it's even, yeah, it's more. It's not just mining. You need to deliver a very sophisticated the chemical compound. So it has to be younger. It has to be more diversified. It means your university, are you as an industry training sufficient engineers? If not, do something about it. Otherwise, have some, young engineers. There's a, you know what? Very simple. You put something in Russian, okay, and say every Russian speaking English less than 20 years old, we offer him, 5 years of training in University of Perth or whatever to become a mining engineer. The next day, you would have 200 extraordinary guys coming just wanting to leave Russia. Okay, that's a simple one. Okay, oh my God, it's so complex. Oh, I can't do this. No, just, that's simple. You can do it tomorrow. If you don't have enough people, just, be exciting. And there's a lot of people who would, if they knew, would love to join your industry.
Because the growth opportunity is enormous, right? That's what young
Enormous.
people want. They want the growth opportunity. They want to feel good about it, right?
Mm.
But at present, most of them see you as the bad guys, and you're not. You're the good guys, right? And you're incredibly critical to this transition as a
You're the
tech
good
company.
guys. Act like good guys.
You know, you're also think what you're doing. You're going into countries which, you know, just take the Congo, right? You're going into countries like
Tough.
that, and you could say it's tough what you're doing, but you're also bringing development to these countries and whatever, and you're enabling them to, you could be enabling them to actually, you know, take their economies to a different level. So you've got really good stories there, but you just need to go out and tell them, right? And again, I just, from where sort of, I've never been as excited in my career as I am now. And the reason is because I now realize that these incumbents in the industry just will not survive, right? So if I just take very simply, sitting in the UK today, the biggest utility in the UK is called Octopus Energy, retail energy. This company was founded 5 years ago. It's got 5 million customers. Now, you tell me why that is. Because there's not one utility in the world that's customer orientated. Not one. So suddenly we like the fact that Octopus is customer orientated. Oh, they like their customers, right? The CEO engages in Twitter with the customers, answers directly what they're saying, their feedback, learning. They've got a technology platform that beats everybody in the industry, right? Now, by the way, it's not just that. It's right across the energy space that's going to happen, okay? And the incumbents are finding it really, really, really difficult to change. If I look at the energy space with the generation area, the utilities don't own generation anymore. It's the financial institutions that own it, right? This is our clients. These are the guys who own it. So you go, okay, well, what's the utility in the future? You don't have generation, okay, or maybe you'll take care of the wires. Okay, that's maybe what they'll do. Okay, I could look in the coal industry, the oil industry, and say the same thing. You've got huge balance sheets now, so do something with your capital and do something before your business is, you know, is no more. Because, and I'm not saying we're not going to have no fossil fuels in the future. There's no doubt we are. But I'm an economist. Who wins? The lowest cost producer. Who's that going forward? It's Saudi Aramco, right? That's the reality. That's the guy. When we need oil in 20 years' time or 25 years' time, we're taking it from Saudi Aramco because their costs of production are lower than everyone else. It's the same in the mining space. It's the lowest cost producer wins, right? So if you're a Shell or BP, you sort of scratch your head and say, well, I'm not gonna, what's my business model going forward? What am I gonna do? I keep saying to them, why aren't you going into mining? Oh, we got out of mining. Oh no, we can't go into mining again. I said, well, what else are you gonna do? Oh, we're going to get into offshore wind. Yeah, okay. That really hasn't been successful so far. We're going to do, they're baby steps, right? But, you know, it's very difficult for these businesses to transition. What I would say is what we are seeing is a whole pile of new businesses that are coming up across the world. And we start in the electric car space, right? And just give you an idea, if you think of it, BYD and Tesla. BYD is a Chinese Tesla. And Tesla, these businesses weren't around, you know, 15 years ago, right? And we look in the space that we're in, which is the solar, the wind area. I've been in it for a long while. The amount of billionaires that have been created in this industry is incredible, right? I go to China and you look at the, you know, the biggest wind turbine manufacturer in the world, billionaire, solar, lithium ion, CATL, billionaire. And guess what? All the young people want to go into this industry. Do they want to go into mining? No. Again, I go back to that point. You've got an image problem, guys. And you need to really, really.
Gangfeng, TNG, none of those companies existed 15, 20 years ago. Cattle, Volt, Envision.